already start by just from the ones who are here, maybe from the students, but also maybe Sydney, if you want to, maybe one or two of you could kind of introduce themselves to Michelle as our guest, so she can feel welcomed and understands her audience, and kind of like tell her a little bit about what you're looking forward to in this talk, or what you're curious about the circular economy. Anyone here who wants to step forward?
Hey, hi, Michelle. Yeah, oh, please go ahead. I'll go next.
Okay. So I'm Tom Kaczynski, and I met Janis working at Precious Plastic in Eindhoven. I've been building the sheet press system in a larger scale format, so making a plywood-like material out of post-consumer plastics, a model that we'd like to expand. And I've had a lot of interaction with the Ellen McArthur report. Let's see, the climate report of 2018, and then there was a new one just this last year, doing a lot of, I sourced it really heavily and ran through all of its sources, writing grants this past year. So I'm looking forward to speaking with you directly. And then, oh, where'd we go? Oh, we moved. Yeah, and just about how, like, what the Ellen McArthur Foundation seems to be doing a lot to format forward movements and climate work, and I wanted to see where that's going. I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit, and I'll let the next go.
It was great. Thanks for sharing, Tom.
Hey, hi. Before I start, do we have time?
Yeah. Let's take like maybe we can take one. You just talk a bit more, and then
sounds good.
We'll get started.
Thank you so much. So nice to meet you here, Michelle. I'd seen one of your videos on YouTube. I think with one of your colleagues from Ellen McArthur Foundation, you had shared examples around circular economy that are there. And I got one of the examples that I did take an inspiration for my own podcast was Appeal, where I'd spoken about it. So something that fascinated me about your work is how you have time and again spoken about collaborations and kind of scaling up the impact on a city level, which even I intend to do here in Mumbai. It's like the population in cities in India is crazy, and we are the biggest generators of waste in all forms. There is no definition. Everything is a waste. So kind of changing people's behavior is one aspect of it, but how do we also make it convenient for people so that they don't have to struggle all the way, right, to now all of a sudden change their old habits? So how do we bring in a system transformation into this? And kind of in a way, I want to do that for Mumbai, because we need help, and nothing's happening as of now. So I would love to know how you did it in New York, how you're doing it in other cities as well. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing that as well. So Michelle, now you know at least two of our students. You'll get to know probably more of them in the Q&A later on. Yeah, I would say let's get started. I think almost all of us are here. The rest might want to watch the recording. So I want to just introduce you really quickly. Yeah, more circular in New York. So Michelle is works for the Ellen McArthur Foundation. She is situated in New York, as you just said. But also she's a systems thinker, and which is going to be the topic for us for next week. So that's really interesting. And that's also why we were so interested in bringing Michelle here, especially. And but also she's worked for IDEO, which is, we'll also get in a bit of contact with, because the design guides that they produced together with the Ellen McArthur Foundation. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Michelle and let her speak about the Ellen McArthur Foundation's vision of the circular economy a little bit. And yeah, you can take it from here, Michelle.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks for the questions, and wonderful to hear a bit about what you're working on and where you're based. If you've seen a recording, then you may know a bit of what the presentation is all about. Given that you have different backgrounds and maybe different disciplines and topics that you've studied, I did try to make this a really clear overview, but I'm happy to go into more detail on any topic. And hopefully there will be some new things for you to learn as well. We'll definitely have an example from Appeal in here, but also some examples from cities and public-private partnerships. So hopefully everyone will find something interesting and we can have a bit of discussion afterward. I'll start first with sharing my screen and taking us through some slides. Are you seeing a Zoom screen? Or are you seeing, let's see, hold on one sec.
We could see your slides.
Oh, the slides? Oh, okay, great. All right. Here we are. Wonderful. All right. So, as mentioned, I'm part of the Ellen McArthur Foundation's North America team. I'm based here in New York City. And I'll give you just a bit of background on the foundation, then we'll dive into the topic of the circular economy and then share some examples. Just to give a little background on the Ellen McArthur Foundation. So in 2005, Dame Ellen McArthur became the fastest solo sailor to circumnavigate the globe. And following that, Ellen met with experts from a variety of countries, economies, and industries to better understand the global approach to the way that the economy uses resources. And in 2010, the Ellen McArthur Foundation was launched. So we're about 10 years old, and we have expertise across a range of programs. And our mission is to accelerate the transition toward a circular economy. And so we develop and promote the idea of a circular economy, and we work with and inspire business, academia, policymakers, and institutions to mobilize system solutions globally and at scale. So here are some of those programs, which I'm happy to discuss further and point you to some resources. It sounds like some of you have already explored some of the papers and reports that we've put together. But we have expertise in plastics, fashion, food, finance, learning, design, data, and policy. And some of you may be very familiar with the idea of a circular economy, others it might be a bit new. So we'll start at the beginning. And so a circular economy is an alternative vision for what we have now, which we would say follows a linear model. And so to describe that a bit more, I'll start with a quick story. So let's rewind into history. It's the middle of winter in 1925 in Geneva, Switzerland. And gathered there are representatives from some of the largest light bulb manufacturers in the world, companies like Philips, General Electric, and others. And they're meeting in secret because they have an issue to address. And that issue is that they've saturated the market and they aren't selling enough light bulbs. And so in response to this, they form a cartel called the Phoebus Cartel. And they collectively agree to limit the lifespan of their light bulbs to 1,000 hours. And at this time in history, the light bulb could actually last about twice that long. So they made these agreements and they decided to enforce them. Members could test each other's light bulbs and issue financial penalties. And the reason we tell this story is because it's one of the first examples of planned obsolescence, a strategy that deliberately ensures a product will need to be replaced. And this describes some of the dynamics behind a linear economy, one in which growth is coupled with the consumption of finite resources and materials. And we've been at a turning point before. In 1684, when the steam engine was invented, it changed everything. So that invention kickstarted the Industrial Revolution, which transformed our ability to make things. raw materials and energy were seemingly infinite, and labor was readily available. So for the first time in history, goods were mass produced. And then we got really good at selling things. So advertising took off and we started to associate new with good. And that accelerated the demand for things and accelerated production as well. And fundamentally, we have the same model today, a linear model in which we take resources from the ground, we use them to make products, which we use, and then when we no longer want them, we throw them away. So we call that the take, make, waste linear model. And it is important to note that this way of doing things has had many positive effects. It's lifted people out of poverty, it's improved health and quality of life, and it's given rise to a host of important innovations. However, it's also led to some massive challenges and externalities. Climate change, loss of biodiversity, just to name a couple big ones. And we're also producing things that are not fit for the system, like plastic packaging in large volumes that's used in places where there isn't infrastructure or systems to collect that material and keep it in the economy and out of the environment. And there are also less visible issues, so things like structural waste and underutilization. For example, the average car sits parked for over 90% of its life. So in contrast to the linear economy, the circular economy is an alternative vision for the way that we design, make, and use things within planetary boundaries. It stems from several schools of thought, including industrial ecology, biomimicry, performance economy, sharing economy, blue economy, cradle to cradle, natural capitalism, regenerative design, all of these ideas, and it really implies a full-scale systems transformation. So looking beyond the extractive linear model, a circular economy entails decoupling economic activity from the consumption of finite resources. And this is underpinned by a transition to renewable energy sources as well. And so the circular economy model builds economic and natural capital and has society-wide benefits. And it's based on 3 principles driven by design. Design out waste and pollution. So by eliminating waste and pollution, the first principle, we're kind of indicating that important decisions are made at the design stage and that waste and pollutions aren't just accidents, but are actually consequences of those decisions at the design stage. So in viewing them as a design flaw, we can look to harness new materials and technologies to ensure that waste and pollution are not created in the first place. The second principle is keep products and materials in use. So creating products and components so that they can be reused, repaired, and remanufactured. This also includes designing the system in which we can get materials back so that they don't end up in landfills or leak into the environment. And the third principle, regenerate natural systems, is really about enhancing natural resources and returning valuable nutrients to the soil and other ecosystems. And there are many organizations around the world putting these circular economy principles into practice. And since the launch of the foundation, we've really emphasized the real world relevance of the principles and the framework. And we believe that business, together with policymakers, academia, nonprofits, and communities can catalyze circular innovation. So I'll bring forward some examples that will hopefully bring these ideas to life. So for the first principle, eliminate waste and pollution. Here's the example from Appeal, a company called Appeal Sciences. And they've captured the attention of many people, leading organizations to smallholder farmers, and some notable investors too. And for good reason, Appeal Sciences pioneered a plant-derived protective layer that can be applied to the surface of fruits and vegetables, keeping them fresher for longer, reducing food waste, and reducing the need for plastic packaging. So the material scientists and innovators behind Appeal Sciences believe that their produce has value and that longer lasting produce means more opportunity for everyone. So it's an approach that focuses on working with nature and using food to preserve food. So a really inspiring story, and this solution is unlocking value across the food system. Another example for that first principle is from a company called Winnow. And Winnow uses artificial intelligence for resource monitoring and management. It measures and characterizes food waste, and then that information can be used to support better decision-making around food preparation and valorization. The hospitality and food service industries are using this technology to capture and analyze data about their operations and to generate reports that help them track inefficiencies and increase awareness among kitchen staff, ultimately saving time and money and reducing food waste. So this technology is driving behavior change and delivering measurable impact. So for the second principle, keep products and materials in use. I actually don't have notes on this, but I can share some details. This is from Adidas. It's their Future Craft Loop product, and I'll link to this in the chat after. But this is another example I wanted to talk about, which is the Renewal Workshop. And they offer circular solutions like renewal and recommerce for apparel and textile brands. They partner with some of the world's best loved brands and retailers to maintain the highest value of their products and recover the full value of what has already been produced. So really all about that recirculation and reuse. So garments that may have been produced but are unsellable for whatever reason, maybe they were returned or they are excess inventory, they can go to the renewal factory, and the products are sorted, cleaned, repaired if needed, and given new life as renewed apparel. And that's then either sold on the brand's sales channels or through the Renewal Workshop's website. For any products that can't be renewed, they're responsibly managed in order to optimize the resources embedded in them. And Renewable Workshop also co-brands every product with a label so that the buyer can have confidence that the garment has been certified to meet the quality standards of renewed apparel. So this is an example of partnership and collaboration. It also reflects some larger trends around repair and resale. And these models are increasingly popular with companies like The RealReal, a consignment marketplace, and H&M's repair ateliers for mending clothing. Another example is from the Austin Materials Marketplace. It's an online platform where businesses and organizations can connect and find reuse and recycling solutions. They can post materials available or desired and exchange those materials. It's a cloud-based marketplace for posting, finding, and exchanging materials. And it's a collaborative network that keeps materials in use and in the economy. So where one organization's hard to recycle waste and byproducts can become another organization's starting material. In addition to diverting waste from landfills, these activities also generate significant cost savings, energy savings. They create jobs and new business opportunities. Their website features some success stories and examples of the materials that are flowing and being reused, so definitely check it out. For the principle Regenerate Natural Systems, an example from a company called GreenWave. GreenWave has developed a model for regenerative ocean farming, a polycultural farming system that involves suspending a simple structure between the sea surface and the seabed that grows a mix of seaweeds and shellfish that don't require any inputs. So this model is deployed for restoring ocean ecosystems, capturing carbon and nitrogen, commercial farming, growing seaweed and shellfish for food, fertilizer, animal feed, bioplastics, and more. And these ocean farms can sit vertically below the surface, so they produce high yields with a small footprint. GreenWave also trains and supports regenerative ocean farmers working on the coastal communities throughout North America. And the last example for these principles is from Ecovative Designs. And Ecovative Design grows biomaterials for packaging products that serve as alternatives to petroleum-based packaging. These biomaterials are made from mycelium, a fungal network of thread-like cells that acts as a self-assembling binder for agricultural byproducts. So these biomaterials are made from crop waste that cannot be used for food or feed. And the mycelium grows, digesting the agricultural byproduct, binding into the shape that's needed. And this growing technique can be used with multiple feedstocks, so allowing use of locally available crops. And at the end of its use, the biomaterial packaging product can simply be composted at home without any need for special equipment. So that's returning the valuable nutrients to the soil and the ecosystem, enhancing natural systems. So those are 3 principles of the circular economy. And hopefully those examples brought the principles to life a bit more. But the circular economy is actually a bigger idea. It represents systemic change, and it goes beyond just fixing the current issues and doing incremental improvements. It tackles the root causes of global challenges like climate change and biodiversity loss and pollution. It's about designing better solutions for people. It creates growth that benefits not only business, but also society and the environment. And the circular economy can help address important and pressing priorities related to housing, mobility, economic development. It also aligns with the UN's SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, including reducing greenhouse gas emissions and tackling climate change. And we've done a lot of research on the role of cities in the transition to a circular economy. And in 2019, we produced a paper on how the circular economy tackles climate change. And our research found that the transition to renewable energy, energy efficiency, and electrified transport are vital if we are to tackle climate change. And those actions account for about half of the emission reductions needed to fulfill the objectives set out in the Paris Agreement. However, the other 45% of emissions that cause climate change come from how we make and use products and food. And those emissions are projected to grow fast, along with the rising demand for materials. So that's where the circular economy comes in and is a key part of the solution. So digging into cities a bit more, you may wonder why focus on cities? And cities are major contributors to climate change. So according to the UN Habitat, cities consume 78% of the world's energy, more than 75% of the world's resources, and produce more than 60% of greenhouse gas emissions and 50% of global solid waste. Yet they account for less than 2% of the Earth's surface. Cities are very susceptible to the impacts of climate change. 70% of cities are already dealing with the effect of climate change, and nearly all are at risk. So the circular economy isn't just about business innovation, but it's also about bringing some of these changes to the city level, to the community level, looking at public and private partnerships. So I've got a couple examples to illustrate that. Looking at New York to start, so in 2020, a report was produced. It was a multi-stakeholder group of city agencies, multinational corporations, foundations, academic institutions, and they came together to reimagine New York's economic systems by proposing sustainable solutions for the long term, while also thinking about recovery efforts in the short term. So the vision for the initiative was to imagine a circular New York City and to help quantify what the opportunity was. So the report identified 10 levers that can generate positive impact. And some of those had those benefits had the potential to create jobs. Others could deliver wider economic and environmental benefits. And then some acted as enablers. So they didn't directly deliver those benefits, but they contributed to the success of others. So this report can be found online, and I can link to it, but here are the 10 levers that were identified. And also, as part of the report, the research suggests that the circular economy can create over 11,000 jobs in New York City by 2030, alongside roles created by the transition to renewable energy. A New York circular economy could significantly boost the outcomes of the New York Works Plan, which aims to create 100,000 good jobs. Another example from a city in Brazil, Belo Horizonte, so Brazil's third largest city. So they had a challenge with growing electronic waste production, youth unemployment, and digital exclusion, disadvantaging low-income communities. So as part of this program called the BH Digital Program, the government established an electronics remanufacturing facility, the Computer Reconditioning Center. And it was where citizens from low-income communities receive extensive training on how to restore IT equipment. The refurbished equipment then goes on to support over 300 digital inclusion sites where locals have free access to computers and the internet, as well as varied training opportunities in basic digital literacy. So this is a program that helps with skills development, waste diversion, and digital inclusion efforts. And it earned Belo Horizonte the title of Brazil's most digitally advanced city. Another example from London comes from London's program called Re-London. And Re-London created a business transformation program that helped empower organizations to transform the way that they do business, creating sustainable value and growth through circular strategies and innovations. So it's a partnership between the Mayor of London and London's boroughs with the mission to make London a global leader in sustainable ways to live, work, and prosper by revolutionizing the relationship between stuff and helping London waste less and reuse, repair, reshare, and recycle. So it had funding from Re-London as well as the European Regional Development Fund, and it was a close relationship with the Greater London Authority. And so this is active, and Re-London is able to support businesses in developing, piloting, and launching well-designed and innovative circular initiatives, and they have advisors to kind of help throughout that process. Another example of a public-private partnership is from Sao Paulo in Brazil. So Nespresso Hortas is a project that was initiated by Nespresso, and it was in collaboration with Sao Paulo City Hall, as well as an agroecological and organic food co-op and a composting company. And it set out to lay the foundation of a circular economy for food within the city, specifically for coffee. And the project aims to demonstrate the benefits of that transition to a circular economy for food. And so Nespresso was able to help collect used ground coffee and then to compost and donate it. So the compost was used and is used for growing food regeneratively and locally for distribution then to the municipal food banks in order to enhance food security and access to nutritious food in the city. And Nespresso actually did the initial investment in the project, a financial commitment, and they aim to help small producers by providing technical assistance for growers who are interested in adopting regenerative farming practices. I think I have two more examples. Plant Chicago is a great example of an effort to cultivate local circular economies. So envisioning a paradigm shift in production, consumption, and waste, all driven at the local level, and generating equity and economic opportunity for residents. So Plant Chicago equips people and businesses with the tools to live more sustainably through community-driven hands-on programs and innovative research projects. They also have a circular economy leaders network, which brings together Chicago area small businesses to cultivate local circular economies. And any small business based in the Chicago area interested in implementing circular economy practices is welcome to join. And they have some of their offering is online, so worth checking out. It's really an incredible organization. Two more examples. Okay, so another one from New York, and this is one that the foundation had quite a bit of involvement with. It was called the Where Next campaign, and it was a multi-stakeholder initiative with the City of New York, Foundation's Make Fashion Circular program, as well as fashion brands, collectors, recyclers, and resale companies. And it was a collaborative communication campaign which encouraged New Yorkers to keep clothes in use and out of landfills. So an online interactive map was created, which marked over 1,000 different collection points throughout the city for clothing, and it allowed New Yorkers to easily find a drop-off point. And collection volumes have increased significantly compared to the same time period. And this also had a great kind of communications campaign that accompanied it. So lots of public awareness as well as the actual map and collection drop-offs. Last example here is Project Ceres, which the foundation also was involved in, and it was with compostable plastic manufacturers BASF and Novamont and the Municipal Waste Association. So This was a pioneering initiative which replaced disposable plastic bags with compostable bags that can be used for household organic waste. So 2 million compostable bags, both shopping bags and produce bags, and 10,000 reusable net bags for buying fruits and vegetables were distributed. And the percentage of compostable bags reaching the plant increased from 20 to 50%, and the resulting compost was better quality and suitable for ecological farming. So hopefully that gave you a little insight into how the circular economy is happening around the world. It really isn't a destination, it's a journey. It's about doing what you can with whatever resources and whatever influence you have. So happy to chat more, and definitely check out our website. We have a lot of case studies. You'll also find some reports and papers that we've produced. And actually just today, we launched a paper on how the circular economy can play a role in preventing biodiversity loss. So thank you so much. Happy to chat some more.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing all of these case studies, Michelle. This is such a long list. I love it.
Yeah, I hope it shows kind of how diverse and how much variety there is in terms of the circular strategies and solutions that can be explored.
Yeah, I think it does. Maybe who has a question to all of these case studies? I know we already collected a lot of questions on Slack, but feel free to ask them yourself if you want to. Otherwise, I'm also happy to read them out for you. But I know that people have a lot of questions for you already.
And Linda, not to put you on the spot, because oh my gosh, I would hate being put on the spot, but you had some great questions that I feel like could be wonderful to ask. I'm happy to ask them, or if you wanted to, please feel free.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think the case studies were super interesting, and thank you for all the amazing work that you're doing to advance the circular economy. I live in New York, and I haven't even heard of some of these initiatives, so I can't wait to look them up. But I guess just like bigger picture, like how do we get from like these small, I mean, they're probably not small, it sounds like they're growing, but how do we get to like more widespread adoption of circularity? And do we think it's possible without like a carbon tax or extended producer responsibility laws? That was one of my questions.
Yeah, I think government and policymakers play a really important role. Our new plastics economy team recently produced some work around extended producer responsibility, and absolutely government regulatory measures can act as drivers for these types of activities and behaviors that we'd like to see. The foundation historically kind of took a business-led approach and has worked with a lot of multinational companies, but it's really thrilling to see that there's activity now happening across all tiers. Plant Chicago is a great example of things that are happening on the community level, and that can be so powerful. And then there's also kind of the top-down approach, working with the CEOs of some of these larger companies who can really help move the needle. It really takes all actors in the system.
And are there any signs that, I mean, I only know little bits, but are there any signs that like we will see extended produce? I think maybe they're further along in Europe, but I imagine in the US there's not much of a chance of extended producer responsibility laws. That's a mouthful.
Definitely some strong signals out of Europe for sure, in terms of EPR schemes. And then we are starting to see it in the US as well. I think Waste Dive has an article with kind of the current legislation that's being considered in various states. And there has been some recent approval, I believe in Maine. So I believe it's coming. And there may be different schemes in different places.
We will also, I think Sydney had to drop out, but we will hear more about this also from her side and from the her institute later on in the course. So I'm sure you'll get to ask all of the EPR questions that come to mind.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's a really good question. Yeah.
Adding to Linda's question, I wanted to ask if there is an integration between carbon credits and circular projects that are now being implemented, because just curious to know, is there a system to do that? Are there organizations doing that?
There's certainly related topics. I don't know of any organization that's maybe using circular metrics. And part of the challenge there is there actually aren't a lot of kind of circular metrics out there. The foundation, and I'll put it in chat, created something called Circulytics. And I think we're hopeful that things like Circulytics will be better integrated with some of the other measurements and metrics out there. But I don't know of any that are maybe directly connected already.
Okay, I understand. But since you're working a lot with the MNCs and they are the ones who are majorly trying to deal in carbon credits, right? So that's where the question came from. So just curious to know that.
Sorry, what was the question?
My question was, the Circulytics measurement is, at least the case studies that I saw are quite well accomplished companies, the multinationals with whom you are working. You're helping them measure their circular approach towards it. That's why I thought if they are offsetting their carbon, they're already doing that. They're already trying to attain carbon credits and trade in their other sustainability projects. So are they also considering the circular approach, the new, whatever their findings are from the Circulytics report? Are they also trying to use it to avail carbon credits?
I don't know specifically, but I think what we hope, and right now Circulytics is an offering for our network. And so that's kind of reflected in who's completed it thus far. And then our team provides direct support for those that have gone through Circulytics. And so I think the foundation certainly advocates for holistic approaches, so making those connections, although I think it remains to be seen if those will be kind of reported together or how they'll feed into their larger strategic plans as it relates to sustainability or climate targets.
Thank you.
So kind of following this train is like, I posted a question just about localization. Like through my reading of reports and grant writing, it was really hard for me to find things that really advocated for localized economy. And I think it's something that's really important in sustainability and circularity, is to be developing these smaller relationships. And so while I understand that as a foundation, it's probably really good and important to net big clients like Nestle and even like Exxon, I'm also like, kind of my dystopia would be the new circular economy being labeled under Nestle and Exxon. It's like, it's not an ideal. So I'm just wondering if there are any movements within the foundation to work towards localized, small business-based circularity. And like if there's anything to help define that for someone like me who's trying to write a grant.
Yep, there are some great organizations doing this type of work. The foundation is involved to a degree. We're a relatively small team, primarily based in Europe, so there's just some limits to our capacity and bandwidth. But absolutely what you're saying, the local level and community level is critical. There's an organization called Metabolic and another one called Terra, who are both doing some incredible work around the world, but definitely in the US, and focused on that community and city scale. And the foundation is working with, I think, close to 15 cities in the US. And that's where we see some of that community level activity. And I'm working really closely with the city of New York. So we're working on a food system project that we're hoping to bring about as it relates to food waste and preventing edible food waste and donating edible food.
Very cool. Also on that New York note is I've been trying to work with Sims Muni for a long time. So if you ever get the chance to drop a good line for the precious plastic system, I dream of having like a way to get the plastics that come out of New York City back into New York City.
Have you visited their facility and done a tour?
I have. Sam is a super nice guy.
Yeah.
I just think it's like there's something stuck in the workings of health safety, like feasibility of the plastic systems. I don't know. There's some work to be done there, but it could go.
I have a question. Thanks so much. Tom, anything else to add? Thank you for that plug. I love your knowledge of the space and your grant writing efforts. So thank you for that. I have some, oh, you're good though? Cool. My question is, me and Ravi are texting on the side being like, you asked your question, it was great, you asked yours. So I'll combine our questions. A lot of students and us in this course are really interested, I think, in how can we get involved? What are roles that we can play? And if you're not, let's say, a policymaker or a designer, curious, what are the types of roles for people within this space for maybe someone who's more of a generalist?
Yeah. Oh, okay. So we did some research as part of our design program, and we looked around the world, and I think, let me grab the number right here. I have it. Not everyone is going to have the term design in their title. So we kind of talk about design with capital D and a lowercase d. And when we kind of analyzed the space, we realized that there are a vastly greater number of people involved in design, if you will. So they're scientists, architects, policymakers, startup founders, and we estimate that there are about 160 million people globally that can influence material flows in the work that they're currently doing. So it isn't necessarily about having circular or design in your title or your role description, but really looking at what skills you have and what are the challenges that you have access to or would like to tackle, and seeing how to make that connection. I'd love to learn a bit more about the group here. Are you technologists? Are you creatives? How would you describe yourself? I think there's a real range, and because it is a full-scale system transition, we need all sorts of backgrounds and skill sets, and internal advocates within a company, internal champions.
I think if you want to, we can do a 10 seconds each, say what you are. I just counted, we are like 11 people, so that should be less than 2 minutes. Yeah?
Yeah, sounds great.
Cool, who wants to start? And then you say the name at the end, who's next? Okay, Amy starts, you're unmuted.
Great. I would say I'm a coach and a facilitator, and I've worked exclusively in education environments, like innovative education environments. And Molly.
Hi, sorry, I'm off camera this morning. Thanks so much for your talk, Michelle. I am Molly. I'm sort of on the programmatic side of the sphere. So I've always worked in the startup ecosystem, really supporting startups with mentorship, access to funding, curriculum access, and all those types of things. So maybe an activist for those that are on the ground, really making it happen. I will pass it over to Nilesh.
Hello, I would say I'm a generalist so far. I've been in consulting roles and currently I'm working with Terra, so I would say in the tech space, but my skills are really operations and general project management is where I do my best. Um, let's go to Bhairavi.
Thank you. I think I am also a generalist. My domain has always been sustainability and waste management, but my interest has been in community involvement and also conceptualizing solutions, problem solving, and and some creative work as well. It's me. Next is Linda.
Hi there. My background is in finance, super far away from the world of sustainability, and also a little bit in commercial real estate, and kind of both on the finance side and project management side, and generally just like in my personal level, a zero waste aspirant, I would say, and a backyard composter. So I'm a little obsessed with circularity, but I'm looking for ways to be more involved. Sorry, Tom.
I'm an artist, designer, and fabricator. Just trying to make money doing any of the three and caring for the world around me. And it's not easy, but we're trying. And Sri Priya.
I was just a conscious citizen who figured out was smitten by circular economy, and my majority skills lie in business development and marketing, but recently picked up podcasting to create awareness around circular economy.
Who's next?
Subhashri.
Hi, I have a background in chemical engineering. I'm pretty new to this space. Currently interested in advocacy, and I'm actually in a gap year trying to get more acquainted with what it takes to build sustainable businesses and circular businesses. I have some experience in sales operations as well.
Amazing. There are two left, I think, if Sydney is gone. There's JJ and there's Prem.
Yeah.
Hi, I'll go. So hi, I'm Prem, and I'm a student. I'm an econ and math student. I'm too young and too early in my career to brand myself. I'm sure there's enough time for that. So I'm just looking at all the different roles available, and that's why I'm here, learning from you all. Ultimately, currently where I am right now, I think I would make the most impact through business and entrepreneurship. I think that's the fastest and biggest kind of leverage that you could use in society today. But then again, I'm open to many things, so I'm learning. Yeah, thank you.
Amazing. And JJ, are you there? Maybe not. Maybe. So then we can, now Michelle, now you met everyone, I think, who's there at the moment.
Anyone else? Anyone else who didn't go? Okay. Well, so nice to hear a bit about each of you. I think, this is a prime example of figuring out what to do. So finding forums like this, educating yourself. I know you'll get into it more in future weeks, but the Circular Design Guide, which I'll put in the chat here, has a section on mindsets. And that's really where it begins, is helping folks shift their mindset to understand kind of what the linear model is and what the challenges are with it and what the alternative is. And I think, you may find some companies out there that have a circular economy team or department, or in the case of London, a department called Re-London. But oftentimes it's still relatively new, or it might be using different terms. So that's where I think really understanding the principles and understanding the foundation of what a circular economy is, then you can start to spot those opportunities and then also start to bring the language to that space. So I think checking out the mindsets in this particular design guide is helpful, and then bringing those to your organization and helping socialize them. And then also, if you're looking to connect with others and just have a bit more networking and a chance to see what other people are working on and see if there's some opportunities to explore synergy and collaboration. There's a LinkedIn group, which I'll put also in the chat. And hopefully that link takes you to it. It's the Circular Design Group, and there are over 26,000 members. So it's a really active group. You can put questions out, you'll get responses from around the world, and also a great place to talk about challenges or opportunities that you're seeing, and see if others might want to connect with you around them.
Yeah, that's also a great great link to sign up maybe while you're doing this course, and when questions pop up, or when, yeah, you can first of all look there, but you can also post them there and maybe connect with others outside of the Terra space already. Yeah, it's a great point. So we have 5 more minutes. Who do we have some more questions?
I have a general question. Like, after COVID, are you seeing, like, does the foundation feel like there's more momentum around being circular, especially like from the corporate side of the world?
Yep, I think there's growing momentum, and a lot of it has to do with the connection to climate. So that's a big priority area for the foundation this year, and coming up to COP26 is really making that the link between the circular economy and the role it plays in tackling climate challenges a bit more clear. And so I think that is helping with kind of this movement towards an alternative way of doing things. You know, there's a lot of focus on public health now coming out of the pandemic. And so, you know, better understanding ecosystems and how the urban and peri-urban and rural connections and linkages, how important they are. There's still a lot of challenges. You know, cities were hit quite hard, and they're going through a lot of transition. There's a lot of budget constraints. So there certainly are still some major hurdles, but it feels like there's growing awareness. Some of the large companies are being more public in what they're doing, so sharing more about some of the stuff that they may have been doing behind the scenes, but now, you know, sharing it more broadly with their consumers. And I think we're seeing more innovators, so more emerging innovators and startups who are kind of circular natives, so kind of getting it from the first go. You know, there's a whole host of them, and some of them are in our network. So that might be worth checking out. But I think the idea is definitely starting to land for people more than ever.
Great. Thank you.
And there are a couple resources if you're interested in digging into the role of finance in the circular economy that I can point you to. We have a finance initiative and recently produced a piece of work on the de-risking effects of the circular economy. So
we will also go into that, but you can also already jump into it, of course, now if you have the time. But we do have a whole class on the finance, where we also talk about that report, actually, of course.
You have a great cohort and program ahead.
I have a kind of a philosophical question to maybe end the 1 hour. You mentioned like with like advent of like a lot of marketing, the society has moved to a more and more fast consumerism kind of mindset, and it also kind of the economy depends on it more or less right now. How do you see this changing? Like, I am not honestly very optimistic about like consumerism going down, given new avenues of marketing coming up with social media, etc. Do you have any thoughts on how that could change potentially?
Yep, I think, consumption is a huge issue, but what we'd love to see is more circular business models. So more business models that prioritize reuse and recirculation, and kind of using what's already been produced versus creating new things. So there are a lot of companies that have done some piloting around that space, and I think with examples like the Real, which have done particularly well, I think we'll see more and more experimentation and hopefully see that more and more as the norm. But yeah, it's tricky. There's a bit of a tension because consumers can only choose from the options that they have available. And if they don't have good options to choose from, they're stuck with what's put in front of them. So absolutely, there is a role of consumer behavior to indicate preferences for better options. And that can influence business in presenting better options, but also it really is the obligation of businesses to present better options to the consumer. So there is this interplay and sometimes a tension between the two.
Sorry, go on.
Maybe this is a bit radical. I might be considered so on a political spectrum, but I see like very close ties to the recycling movement is give people a blue bin, tell them it's sustainable, and let them continue on believing that what they're doing is good. And then the reality is vastly different. And I see this like very much with a lot of these kind of, it's a greenwashing to a sense, is like, we made it out of recycled plastic this time. I think what Nilesh is getting to is like, that seems to be what sustainability means right now in the global conversation. And like, can we make movements to dismantle these bigger organizations and these larger systems? Like, how do we break a financial system that feeds itself?
Yeah. And of course, that would be ideal. But for example, Michelle, you now mentioned like the businesses need to, for example, give more options for consumers to be able to choose. With climate change, for example, there's already like clear economic benefits to turning to renewables versus coal now. Is there any sort of indication that circular business models and for a company, not as a ecosystem as a whole, but for a particular business moving to these circular business models or long life products, for example, that's better for a business than the current system? Is there any indication to that?
Yep. So we actually just did an analysis and we have a study coming out probably, I think it's end of November. So I'd be happy to share that. But yeah, it does kind of quantify these opportunities and show how it is good for business to have circular strategies and circular business models.
Got it. Looking forward to that. Thank you.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. So I'm very conscious of your time, Michelle. Thanks so much. We are already 2 minutes over. Sorry for that. But I think it was great to end on this kind of dark and critical note as well. So we'll figure out that hopefully a bit more in the next few weeks. But thank you so much, Michelle, for your time, for the presentation. And yeah, thank you for just being part of the Terra cohort.
Thanks for having me, and you've got a great group, so I hope you guys enjoy the course, and feel free to get in touch and I can point you to anything that I've referenced if you want to go a little deeper.
Thank you. Bye.
Sweet. Thanks. See you all next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.